Story 1: The Wicking Tree. The town of Red Lick, Arkansas, had no claim to fame beyond a rusted-out tractor museum and a gas station with a taxidermy raccoon that flipped the bird to customers from behind the counter. That and the Wicking Tree. Nobody talked about it openly, not unless the wind was howling low through the cornfields, and they'd had at least 3 shots of Jack to dull their sense of better judgment. The Wicking Tree wasn't even a tree anymore, not really. Just a half-dead husk with twisted black limbs that stretched out like broken fingers over the eastern edge of town. Folks said it never dropped leaves in autumn. Some said it hadn't grown a leaf since 1901. When I rolled into Red Lick, I wasn't looking for trouble. Trouble found me anyway. I hunt things most people don't believe in. Monsters. Witches. Ghosts with a bad attitude and worse manners. The call came from a farmer named Caleb Dorsey, who said his cattle were turning up hollow. Not dead. Hollow. Emptied like tin cans, skin intact. Nothing but a slick black residue inside that made your eyes itch just looking at it. I've seen things. Horrible things. But when a man says his cows are coming back from pasture with their bones sucked out like juice through a straw, you don't hang up. You pack your gear, gas the car, and head south. Red Lick didn't welcome outsiders. My hotel room smelled like mildew and regret. The receptionist had one eye permanently stuck in a squint, as if she was constantly deciding whether or not to report you. I dropped my bags and went straight to the Dorsey farm. Caleb was built like a busted fence post, all brittle muscle and wiry limbs. He didn't smile when I showed my ID. Didn't offer me coffee. Just pointed toward the pasture with a shaking hand and said, "You'll smell it before you see it." He wasn't wrong. The stench hit me before I even passed the scarecrow, a rancid, greasy rot that crawled into your sinuses and nested there. At the edge of the field, near a barbed wire fence, lay the cow. What was left of it? Every orifice had been stretched wide, too wide. There were no wounds, just gaping holes. Inside, nothing. Not even organs. Just that same black smear. A perfectly intact corpse with nothing left to give. The grass around the carcass had withered to ash. Flies avoided it. "Started with the cattle," Caleb said from behind me. "Then the dogs. Then my son." I turned. He was staring past me, out toward the Wicking Tree in the distance. It looked closer than it should have been, like it had crept nearer just for a better look. "They said it was sleepwalking," he continued, voice flat. "Tommy walked all the way out to that damn tree. We found his shoes halfway down the lane. Blood in his footprints. But he kept walking. All the way to the tree. And..." He turned to me. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't sad either. Just empty. "We never found the rest. I stayed the night at the Dorsey place. Slept on the couch with my shotgun propped beside me and a silver charm under my pillow. I'd seen too many possessed kids walk into lakes, cornfields, forests, anywhere they didn't belong." The look on Caleb's face told me this wasn't about sleepwalking. This was older. Darker. Something ancient had taken root in that damn tree. I could feel it. A pulsing weight that hummed against my skull like a swarm of hornets. At 2:13 a.m., I heard whispering. I crept outside, barefoot and armed, and watched a girl from the neighboring farm stumble barefoot down the road in a trance. She didn't flinch at the gravel cutting her soles, didn't blink as the shadows of the wicking tree swallowed her whole. She never screamed. By the time I reached the base of the tree, the bark was slick with black sap, and the girl was gone. Just like Tommy. I laid salt and ash in a wide circle around the tree. Burned sage. Chanted in Latin. The wind picked up, sharp and cold, and for a second I thought maybe I'd pissed it off. Maybe I should have walked away. Then I saw the roots. They were moving. Underground. Squirming just beneath the surface, like something alive. Hungry. The black sap began to boil up from the base, coating the trunk, spilling down like a slow, viscous stream. And in that moment, the tree breathed. I swear to God it inhaled. I threw a Molotov straight at the base and ran. Flames licked the air, sparks tearing skyward. I heard it howl, low, ancient, not like anything from this world. But the fire spread, climbing the branches, igniting the rot, searing the bark to cinder. The whole thing went up like it had been soaked in oil for decades. I didn't stop running until I hit pavement again. Didn't look back. The next morning, the tree was gone. Nothing left but a scorched crater, ringed with blackened grass and twisted, charred bones. Not animal bones. Human. 4 skeletons fused into the roots, teeth cracked in silent screams. The girl from the other night? She was on her porch that morning. Blank stare. Bloodied feet. No memory of anything. Caleb shook my hand. Didn't say thank you. Just handed me a photo. Thought you might want to see this, he said. It was old. Black and white. A group of 6 men, standing beside the same tree, only younger. Stronger. In the photo, the tree had leaves. And in the middle of the group stood a boy with black eyes and a stitched mouth. On the back, someone had scribbled in shaky cursive. _ The wicking boy feeds the roots. _ I burned the photo. I left Red Lick and never looked back. But sometimes, in certain backwoods stretches of road where the signal dies and the crows go silent, I see twisted branches on the horizon that don't quite match the trees around them. And I smell sap. Burning. Story 2. The Scarecrow's Second Skin. You ever drive through a town so small you wonder if you imagined it? One gas station, one church, and a single stop sign that looks like it's been bleeding rust since the Eisenhower administration. That's what Dagger Hollow, Kentucky was. Didn't show up on most maps. Locals liked it that way. I was called in by the local sheriff's deputy, a kid barely out of the academy who'd inherited a problem bigger than his badge. Said something was taking people. Said it was wearing them too. Normally I'd brush off a story like that, blame it on meth heads, trauma, or both. But there was something in his voice, flat, hollow, like the wind had scraped the emotion right out of him. He told me to meet him at an old tobacco farm outside town, just past a field of sunflowers that hadn't bloomed in years. That should have been the first red flag. The second came when I stepped out of the car and heard something laughing in the corn. I met Deputy Harper by the barn, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep or crying, maybe both. He didn't offer a handshake, just motioned to the field and said, 6 missing in 4 weeks. All left behind the same thing. I followed him. It wasn't a body. It wasn't even parts of a body. It was skin. Whole. untorn. Like someone peeled it off in one go. A human shell discarded like old laundry. The face was still intact, eyes wide open, lips stretched mid-scream. Inside, nothing but air. Doctor from Bowling Green said it looked like molting. Harper muttered. Like a snake. He paused. Only it ain't no snake. 'Cause snakes don't wear you afterward. He told me it started with animals. Cattle, goats, even a bear that had wandered in from the hills. Skin left behind in whole sheets, the rest of them gone. Then it moved on to people. A woman found her husband's skin sitting at the breakfast table, clothes still on, wedding ring on his finger, but he was gone. And then, Harper said, she saw him again. I squinted. What do you mean? Saw him. Walking out past the scarecrow. Looked just like him. Walked like him. Only he didn't look at her. Didn't stop. Just kept walking into the field. That's when I asked the obvious. What's up with the scarecrow? He didn't answer at first. Just looked toward the far edge of the tobacco field. I followed his gaze. It was hard to see through the mist, but sure enough, there was a scarecrow posted on a crooked beam at the edge of the land, arms outstretched, hat low, face stitched in a cruel smirk. Even from a distance, I knew something was off. Too tall. Too real. I think it's not the same scarecrow every time, Harper finally said. What do you mean? I mean, I think it changes. That night, I stayed in the barn. Set up wards. Salt lines. Iron spikes around my cot. I've faced wendigos, skinwalkers, even a few spirits nasty enough to turn your brain inside out. But nothing made me feel like this. Like my bones were vibrating wrong inside me. Like the air itself had teeth. Around midnight, I heard something shuffle outside the barn. Not walk. Shuffle. Drag. Slow and deliberate. I stayed low and peeked through the wooden slats. Something was standing beside the scarecrow. It looked like Harper. But it wasn't. The way it moved was borrowed. Muscles twitching too fast, shoulders swaying like it didn't know how to balance. Its arms hung loose at the elbows, like the bones didn't fit right inside. It looked up. Right at me. Even from the barn, I saw its eyes, black, glistening, with the wet shine of something recently born. And it smiled. That wasn't Harper anymore. I waited until sunrise before I stepped back into the field. Harper was gone. No signs of struggle. No tracks. Nothing but a new skin on the ground near the scarecrow. His. Laid out like a costume waiting to be put on again. I approached the scarecrow with a flare gun in hand, charm in my teeth. The air around it pulsed hot and cold, like a fever dreaming. And then I realized. The scarecrow was breathing. Its chest rose slow and shallow, threads pulling against straw-stuffed seams. Beneath the burlap and denim, something writhed. Shifted. I shot it. The flare exploded against the thing's chest, lighting it up in a burst of sulfur and flame. The scream it let out wasn't human. Wasn't even animal. It was like something ancient, older than flesh, burning from the inside out. And from the inferno, others ran. Figures. Shells. Wearing faces of the missing. They burst into flame as they fled, shrieking like children tossed into boiling oil. and as the scarecrow crumbled into blackened limbs and cinders, the field went dead silent. Like it was listening. I found Harper's body, or what was left of it, buried beneath the scarecrow's post. Bones sucked clean, skin shredded and used like confetti. I burned the whole field, salted it, cursed it, and left behind a warning carved in stone. Do not sow, the scarecrow reaps. Asterisk asterisk. That was 3 years ago. But just last week, I got a letter with no return address. Inside was a photo. A new scarecrow. Same post. Same smirk. And beside it, a face I haven't seen since that night. Deputy Harper. Smiling. With black, shining eyes. Story 3. A house that hungers. I should have listened when the realtor said the property came. As is. Most people hear that and think plumbing. Termites, maybe. At worst, a roof leak no one's bothered to fix. But when you're a hunter like me, as is, can mean something else entirely. I took the case in western Pennsylvania. Tiny place tucked up against a tree-choked ridge called Ashburn Hollow. The house had sat empty for nearly 20 years, and not for lack of buyers. Plenty had moved in. None had lasted longer than a season. Folks just don't settle in well. The realtor, Carol, told me, biting her lip as she fumbled the keys. They say the house, it doesn't like strangers. The house was a tall, narrow Victorian, nestled between dead oaks that creaked without wind. Paint peeled from its flanks like curling skin. Windows gaped like empty eye sockets. And the front door? It was too small for the frame. Like it had been replaced. Or swallowed. I moved in under a fake name, said I was writing a novel and wanted to live off the grid. Locals didn't press. Most avoided the place altogether. I made a point of asking around. Grocers, bartenders, gas station clerks. They all said the same thing. It gets in your head. What does? I'd ask. They never answered. Just crossed themselves and walked away. It started on the third night. Scratching. At first I thought it was rats, maybe a raccoon. But the sound didn't come from the attic or basement. It came from the walls. The bedroom wall would pulse like something was shifting inside it. Not crawling. Shifting. Rearranging. I'd press my ear to the plaster and hear breathing. Slow. Rhythmic. Almost human. On the fifth night, I woke up to find every door in the house open. Front door, back door, cabinets, closets, even the dumbwaiter I hadn't touched. Wide open. Waiting. I bolted them shut, salt-lined the thresholds, lit black candles, and burned rosemary in every room. That bought me a few nights. Then the stairs changed. Literally. I remember climbing them and counting 13 steps, as I always did. But halfway up, I realized something wasn't right. My foot came down on a step that hadn't been there the day before. Then another. By the time I reached the top, I'd counted 24. The hallway was longer too. And darker. The air buzzed, like a generator humming just beneath the skin of reality. I turned back, stepped down, and there were 13 stairs again. I didn't sleep that night. On the 8th day, the house started talking. It whispered in dead voices. I'd hear a young girl sobbing from the cellar, only for it to shift into guttural chanting in some language I didn't recognize. Sometimes the faucets bled. Sometimes the lights pulsed like a heartbeat. But the worst was the mirror. There was only one in the house, a long, cracked thing at the end of the upstairs hallway. I avoided it at first. Something about it just felt wrong. But one night I caught a glimpse out the corner of my eye, and froze. The hallway behind me was empty. But in the mirror, a man stood behind me. Tall, faceless, dripping with something black and thick. His hand was raised, fingers spread like claws, mouth a perfect O of silence where a face should have been. I turned fast. No one there. But the mirror remained fogged where he'd stood. And in the middle of the condensation, a single word, smeared in oily smudges. Hunger. I left that night. Or tried to. My car wouldn't start. Phone dead. No signal. When I finally walked back up to the house, every light was on. Every window lit with a pale, yellow glow. The front door creaked open before I could touch the handle. And there, just inside, sat a plate of food. Steak. Mashed potatoes. Wine. Still steaming. A note beside it, written in scrawled red ink. You'll never starve if you stay. I knocked the plate aside and ran. Spent the night in the woods, wrapped in my coat, watching the house from a ridge. Around 3 a.m., something came out. Not a person. Not really. It was wearing a woman's skin, but wrong. Too long. Too thin. Bones pressing from beneath the surface like broken furniture under a sheet. Its face split open where a mouth should be and unhinged like a snake, jaw dripping with tar. It sniffed the air. Then turned toward me. I ran until dawn. When I returned, the house was different. Smaller. As if it had eaten part of itself during the night. The stairs were gone. The hallway gone. The mirror? Shattered. The dining room was sealed shut with bricks that hadn't been there the day before. And the walls whispered something new. More. I did what I should have done on day one. I burned it. Gasoline, salt, sigils carved into the floorboards. The flames roared fast and high. I saw faces in the smoke, hundreds. Some screaming. Some silent. One of them looked like me. The fire burned for 2 days. The foundation cracked. The chimney collapsed. Nothing left but ash and bone. And in the ruins, buried beneath the scorched floorboards, I found a door. It led downward. Still does. I left it alone. Some hunger doesn't die when you starve it. Some hunger waits. Story 4. The Thing in the Pond. The town of Barrow Creek sits cradled in the folds of West Virginia's wooded hills, thick forests, mist-choked hollows, and a silence so complete it makes your bones ache. I came because of a pond. A girl named Wren had drowned in it. That's what the report said. 17, track star, honor student. The kind of girl you picture on the back of milk cartons from the 90s. Except the part they left out was that when they pulled her from the pond, her mouth was full of black eggs. Not dirt. Not mud. Eggs. The coroner's report mentioned over-gelatinous masses of unknown origin. That's bureaucratic for _what the fuck is this? _ Wren's family reached out after the sheriff stopped returning calls. I was already 3 cases deep, but something in their voices told me this was different. desperate, and cold. Like they'd already mourned, but not for their daughter, for themselves. I rented a cabin a quarter-mile from the pond. Locals wouldn't talk. Every time I asked, the answers got colder. Don't fish there. Don't go near it after dark. And the most chilling, it remembers. The pond looked ordinary enough, small, surrounded by cattails and crooked willow trees, with a surface like tarnished silver. No fish jumped. No birds called. It was too still. Like the air had thickened into something denser, heavier. I visited the town library, flipped through old records, hoping to find anything, drownings, disappearances, maybe some odd history. The librarian handed me a yellowed box of microfiche with a look that said "don't dig too deep." That's when I found the old clipping. Mother drowned in pond, son unaccounted for 1897. The picture was what froze me. A man stood by the pond, face blurred by age and exposure. But something about the stance felt off. Too straight. Too stiff. The headline was eerily similar to Wren's case. Mother found floating, body filled with what early coroners described as black nodules. The child was never found. I made the mistake of returning to the pond at night. The moonlight barely pierced the fog. I watched the water for hours. Just when I started to believe this might all be grief and legend, the surface shifted. Not rippled. Shifted. Like something beneath the water had turned over. That's when I saw her. Wren. Standing knee-deep in the water, facing the shore. Hair plastered to her skull, eyes milk-white, mouth slack. She opened her arms, slow, like puppet strings had been clipped loose, and something slipped from her throat. Long and black, it hit the water and darted away, splitting the surface in a jagged line. I couldn't move. Not out of fear, out of weight. Like gravity had doubled just for me. She took a step toward shore. The water didn't splash. Didn't even ripple. I stumbled backward, fell hard against the gravel and moss. The impact broke whatever hold the place had on me. I bolted, didn't look back until I was safe inside the cabin. I locked the doors, salted the windows, burned sage until the walls turned gray. But the next morning, there were wet footprints at the foot of my bed, and a small pile of eggs on the windowsill. I left immediately, but I couldn't let it go. Not yet. Before I drove off, I visited Wren's family one last time. Her mother looked like she'd aged a decade in 2 weeks. Skin papery, eyes twitching to corners of the room like she expected the walls to answer her. I told her what I saw. She didn't cry. Didn't shout. She just nodded. We tried to keep her from it. She whispered. She sleepwalked. Always drawn there, like something called her. Same as her grandfather. Same as his father. The pond doesn't take strangers. It takes what belongs to it. I paused. Belongs how? She looked me in the eye and said, Our blood. That's where it started. That night, I burned the microfiche, torched every photo, every clipping, every note. But I kept one thing. A black egg. I sealed it in a glass jar, submerged in vinegar and salt, locked it in a lead-lined box and buried it 5 feet beneath concrete in my storage unit. It still pulses. Sometimes I hear it tapping the glass when I'm falling asleep. Last week I got a postcard. No return address. No message. Just a photograph of me standing beside the pond. Only I've never been in that photo. And the version of me in it? He's smiling. And he has milk-white eyes. Story 5. The Church That Whispers. If you take Route 27 past Ironvale and follow the gravel cutoff down to where the hills get sharp and the radio goes quiet, you'll find a crooked little church leaning into the hills like it's trying to escape the sky. Locals call it Mercy's End. No services. No congregation. Just a weather-beaten sign out front that reads, "The dead have no need for salvation." I first heard about it from a fellow hunter named Co-op. We were trading stories over whiskeys and stale bar peanuts when he leaned in and said, "You ever hear a building try to pray?" I laughed. He didn't. He said it started with missing pets, then people. Hikers. Drifters. A pair of missionaries who came knocking and never knocked again. All vanished near Mercy's End. Coop had gone to check it out himself, but something sent him running. Not a spirit. Not a creature. A sound, he told me. _voice_ that ain't meant to be heard. It's like listening to the bones of a language that forgot how to be human. That was enough for me. I arrived in Ironvale in early October. Leaves burning red in the trees, wind sharp enough to flay a memory. The locals were tight-lipped. Most looked at me like they were already grieving my loss. The only person who said anything useful was a truck stop waitress named Dot. "You go out there," she said, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "You bring something holy. And I don't mean that plastic cross you hang from the rear view. I mean something _real. Something older than the Bible and meaner than God." I nodded. Slipped a charm into my coat pocket. Iron in one hand, bone-carved rosary in the other. The path to Mercy's End was lined with thorn bushes, the kind that draw blood just by looking at them. When I reached the clearing, the sky changed. It had been noon, but the light turned copper, like the sun was trying to hide behind its own eyelids. The church looked smaller than I expected. Wood warped, roof caved in on one side, bell tower tilting like a dying drunk. But what stopped me was the silence. No birds. No bugs. No wind. Just breathing. Coming from inside. Not fast. Not labored. Just waiting. I stepped onto the porch. The wood screamed under my boots. The door was open, but not wide. Just a slit. Like the building was peeking. I pushed it open. The pews were empty. But the altar? It was bleeding. Thick black ichor dripped from the crucifix. Not blood. Blood doesn't bubble. And it doesn't whisper your name. The walls were carved in symbols, some I recognized from old witchcraft texts, others I'd only seen in the margins of unholy books. Every surface was etched with language that burned my eyes to read. And behind the pulpit, where a priest should have stood, something was hanging. Upside down. Arms stretched wide, skin peeled back like wings of meat and tendon. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't rotting either. Preserved. Posed. The bones of its fingers were fused into the wood like nails. When I turned to leave, the door was gone. Just wall. A solid slab of timber where I'd come in. Then the breathing stopped. and the church started to speak. Not in words. In memory. I was standing in my childhood home. My father was shouting. The sound of my mother sobbing. The smell of whiskey and sweat. Then a flash, and I was 12 again, hiding under the table, praying to a God who never listened. Then I was older, holding a gun, blood on the floor, trembling hands. I fell to my knees. I remembered things that weren't mine. Deaths I didn't cause. Names I never knew. It flooded me, wave after wave of borrowed guilt, drowning me in lives I hadn't lived. Until I couldn't remember which ones were real. And over it all, the church whispered, "Confess." I screamed. The walls closed in. Literally. The pews groaned and twisted, reshaping like ribs around a throat. I dug into my coat, pulled the charm God gave me. A tooth. Human. From a stillborn baby. Old. Blessed by something that should have stayed buried. I crushed it in my fist. The scream that tore through the church wasn't human. The crucifix burst into flame, the bleeding corpse ignited like dry kindling, and the air shuddered with raw hate. The door reappeared. I ran. Didn't stop until I hit gravel again. My boots were soaked with black muck. My ears bled. And something inside me had gone quiet. Something I didn't know had been awake until it wasn't. Back in Ironvale, Dad handed me coffee with shaking fingers. "You saw it?" I nodded. "It let you leave?" I nodded again. She swallowed hard. "You gave it something. That's the only way it lets you out. You leave a piece behind, or it takes everything." I looked at my palm. Blood and ash. The tooth had burned away. But something was missing from me too. A name, I think. A memory. I can't recall my sister's face anymore. Just static where she used to be. And sometimes, when I sleep, I hear a sermon in my dreams. A voice made of wood and old nails, preaching from the rafters of a church that never stops whispering. And beneath it all, I feel pews shifting, making room for me.